In today's video, I'm going to give you clarity on exactly the nutritional steps to take to start to improve your thyroid function naturally. Iodine is a mineral that also functions as an antimicrobial. You've probably heard of it being used before in operating rooms to be able to kill bacteria on a specific surface. It does just that, but iodine is also actually utilized to be able to make thyroid hormones. If you've ever heard of the name T4 and T3 before, those are the abbreviations for the inactive state, T4, and the active state, T3, of our thyroid hormones. And the 4 and the 3 that's attached to that letter T actually is the number of iodine molecules that are attached to tyrosine. So T4 is tyrosine attached to 4 iodine molecules, and T3 it is tyrosine attached to 3 iodine molecules. So in order for us to make thyroid hormones, we need iodine. You literally cannot make thyroid hormones without iodine, and the body can't manufacture iodine from other things. Some of the nutrients out there, like vitamin D, for example, our body can synthesize it from the sun through absorption through our skin. With something like iodine, our body can't do that. So if we aren't consuming enough in our diet, there's actually a risk for deficiency, and that's one of the reasons why iodine was something that was added to table salt. You've probably heard of iodized salt before. That was something that was added to table salt in the United States to actually prevent goiter and prevent iodine deficiency. Some of the other risks of iodine deficiency outside of goiter are things like cretinism, which is intellectual deficits in children, as well as hypothyroidism. Research has shown that both a deficiency and an excess of iodine can both cause hypothyroidism. But we have to be very cautious with iodine because iodine is also a pro-oxidant, which means that it can also drive oxidative stress in the body. So we want to make sure that before we introduce iodine, that we've actually supported the oxidative stress process, that we have counted for and controlled for inflammation, and that our body has sufficient antioxidant reserves before we add in more iodine. When you start on iodine, you're going to see an upregulation of thyroid hormones. So it's normal that if you were to go in for a lab draw, you would see an increase in TSH the first couple of months of starting iodine. But we do expect for this TSH to actually come back down to normal. And this is just a transient change that happens as you add more of the building blocks to make those thyroid hormones. The body actually stores weeks to months worth of thyroglobulin to be able to synthesize or make our thyroid hormones. The reason the body does this is to actually buffer an abrupt decrease that can occur in your iodine intake. So our body has some mechanisms to be able to support us in case we aren't perfect with our nutrition and we aren't able to get in enough iodine, but it can only do this for a short period of time. So really the issue comes in with long-term deficiency. And there's certain compounds in foods that can actually decrease iodine absorption when our body's already in a low iodine state. You may have heard of foods called goitrogens before. Goitrogens are what are found in foods like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, cruciferous vegetables in particular, but also in soy-based products. And goitrogens can actually block our absorption of iodine when our body's already in an iodine deficient state. Additionally, outside of goitrogens are things high in halogens. Technically, iodine is a halogen, and because of that, it can compete with other halogens for absorption. So we want to be mindful of other halogens like fluoride, bromine, and chloride, as they can actually impair our absorption of iodine. We often are going to get exposed to things like bromide in more of your baked goods and pastries and cereals and things of that sort. It's added. It can also be in sodas because it's added as a artificial ingredient. You can find chloride more so, or chlorine, in water. Typically, tap water is a high source of chlorine. You can also find fluoride in toothpaste as well as in things like canned sardines that have bones in them. So we want to be cautious of these different types of exposures, especially if you're coming into contact with large quantities. Some simple ways to be able to mitigate the intake of these halogens is to utilize a vitamin C spray before going swimming where there is added chlorine. Filter your drinking water, especially to decrease or remove the fluoride and chlorine that could be added in there. To switch over from a fluoride-containing toothpaste over to something that's fluoride-free to be able to mitigate that fluoride exposure orally, and to maybe even look at foregoing fluoride treatments when you go to the dentist. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a particular timeline of when to introduce iodine to make sure that you get all the benefit without any of the harm. I mentioned that one of the things that can happen when you introduce iodine is more oxidative stress. And that's because as our body utilizes iodine, we actually produce hydrogen peroxide as a byproduct. So we want to make sure that we have lots of antioxidants in the system before adding in iodine. A couple of these that are the most important are selenium, molybdenum, and glutathione. These help actually support the neutralization of this hydrogen peroxide process that occurs when our body makes thyroid hormones. This is especially important if you have autoimmune thyroiditis, such as Hashimoto's. So making sure that you are on selenium supplementation, N-acetylcysteine or glutathione, and or something like molybdenum before starting iodine is key. I would also look at trying to incorporate these into food sources. Selenium can be found in meats as well as Brazil nuts. N-acetylcysteine or glutathione we can actually make from incorporating lots of sulfur-rich foods such as onions and garlic into our diet. Selenium also helps us make more of our body's own glutathione. And molybdenum is most found in legumes like black-eyed peas and chickpeas. And those are some of my favorite foods for individuals with low thyroid function, and because of their simultaneously really high fiber content that's really supportive for blood sugar control. Additionally, you can look at utilizing other antioxidant-rich components like vitamin C and vitamin E to be able to help neutralize that oxidative stress, especially if there's anything going on within the immune system that could be depleting your levels of antioxidants such as mold or chronic infections. These can be particularly important. Vitamin C we find in most all of your citrus fruits as well as strawberries and broccoli, but you also get it from supplementation. You can utilize something like camu powder. It is a food, but it has about 10 times more vitamin C than does something like an orange. Otherwise, you can also supplement with a vitamin C powder or vitamin C capsules. Vitamin E is most abundant in foods that have nice healthy fats in them, like almonds and olive oil. We just want to make sure that we are getting cold pressed extra virgin olive oil so we can keep those antioxidants in their most potent state. And that when you're purchasing olive oil, you're looking at the harvest date. It doesn't tell you the harvest date. It probably hasn't been within the last year. Ideally, though, the olive oil that you're purchasing has been harvested within the last year because that's what actually protects the antioxidant quality. And then when you're utilizing the olive oil, we want to be mindful that we're not cooking at very high temperatures. Really above 375 degrees Fahrenheit is at the smoke point of when you start to lose some of those antioxidants from the olive oil. So if you aren't sure how much antioxidants or how much support you need before starting iodine or the timeline of them, it can be a wise next step to consider testing. Testing your mineral levels can help us gain insight into where your antioxidant reserves are, where your selenium levels and glutathione levels are, and when might be the right time to start iodine. I personally also like to look at other sources of inflammation in the body and look at things like high sensitivity C-reactive protein, oxidized LDL, myeloperoxidase, and ferritin levels, as those tell us a little bit more about the bigger picture of inflammation and if the body is ready for adding in that iodine or if we need a little bit further support within lowering inflammation. Then once your body is ready, then you can look at slowly starting on iodine. The key is to start very low and go slow and to use very small dosages of it, as you don't need very much to be able to support thyroid function. If you prefer to start with food sources, those can also be a great option. And you can look at utilizing sea vegetables like sea kelp and seaweed as a great way to get those iodine in through food sources. My personal favorite is using kelp granules, and these can be something that's added to eggs or meat when you cook it, and it tastes very similar to something like added salt. Overall, though, the most important thing to note is that it's not if you need iodine, it's just when you need iodine. If you have low thyroid function, iodine needs to be an important piece of your food and supplemental plan. And knowing when to start really comes down to your antioxidant capacity, your antioxidant reserves, and inflammation levels. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you want to see more content like this, be sure to hit the bell to subscribe to my channel so you'll be the first to know when I release a new video.